Okay.
Great.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I have a working podcast. No, I don't know that I want to say the thing that I was going to say.
Oh, should we pause?
Oh, no.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. It was, I was thinking of, like, the sneezing and, like, the multiple sneezes.
Mm-hmm.
And did your, like, I feel like everyone had a combined, unified middle school experience if you were just at, like, a normal public school. And I was just gonna ask if it was a universal experience that, like, there is a rumor that every sneeze is like 1/7 of an orgasm.
This is just not where I thought the conversation was going. I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't that.
So this wasn't a universal rumor, is what I'm hearing.
No, it is. No, it was.
Oh, okay.
I just didn't know that that's where you were taking it.
Well, because I was thinking about the fact that you sneezed twice, and I was like, oh, haha. And then I was like, why do I still make that joke in my head? That's stupid. I'm 30 years or almost 30 years old or whatever. And then you're like, let's press record. And I'm like, okay.
That's so funny. Okay. Well, there's our intro.
I don't even think that's true, by the way. I feel like it was debunked. I don't think that's real.
Okay, let's do a quick goog. Real quick. Is a sneeze really 1/7 of an orgasm?
I feel like it can't be.
The amount of endorphins produced by a sneeze is far less than an orgasm, and there is no cumulative effect when sneezing, so no amount of sneezing is going to feel like an orgasm.
Disappointing.
Quora is the new Yahoo Answers, and I just got to read out the Quora that came up when I Googled this.
Okay.
Why does my boyfriend always sneeze after his orgasm?
Well, what's the answer?
The answer is genetics. This is just the top.
It's just how he
This
is.
is just the top. The sneeze response happens because of a nerve impulse in your brain, and there is something irritating in your nose that must come out. For example, this impulse is sometimes triggered. Oh, for some people, this impulse is sometimes triggered by different stimulus. Examples include, but are not limited to, being hungry, eating too fast, looking at bright lights.
Chris sneezes when he looks at the sun.
Yeah, that happens to me.
Yeah, I made fun of him for it. That's one of the reasons we're getting married in April. So that there's no sun.
Having an orgasm, plucking your eyebrows. I mean, that one makes sense.
Can you imagine if you were plucking your eyebrows and you sneeze?
That happens to me.
But, like, how? Do you not, like, just rip out your whole freaking eyebrow at that point?
Well, I don't actually pluck this part of I just pluck the middle. Because I have, like, unibrow status, but my eyebrows otherwise look pretty good. IMO. Mm-hmm. I mean, let me know if they look like trash. I can get them done. But
no, they look great.
I've never really thought that they looked that bad if I didn't mess with them. And so I just pluck the middle, and it's sometimes it'll make me sneeze, but there's kind of low risk. Like, what am I gonna? I'm not plucking.
I guess. Yeah, that's fair. I was thinking, like, you're doing, like, intricate plucking hair, and then you end up, like, yanking out, like, a patch. You know what I mean? Like, that feels rough. Mm-hmm. It feels like a rough genetic response to have.
Yeah. It's so funny. Quora.
I don't think anything can honestly ever actually replace Yahoo Answers. Like, that was just peak. No. Everyone's in third grade. Like, I remember in, like, early middle school, my friend literally had, like, status on Yahoo Answers answering shit. And this is, like, 2006.
Incredible.
We're in 6th grade or whatever. She had status. And I'm like, just imagine actually having a serious question. You've got this 6th grader being like, well, this is the answer. Like, I love it. I would spend so much time on Yahoo Answers.
Yeah. It was a good time. It was. It was a good time.
It was a different time.
Yeah. Okay, should we get started?
We can get started. Hi, I'm Bridget.
And I'm Maddie. Welcome to Baddy Breakdowns, where we hang out, have fun, and play games all the way to the end. Today, we're going to talk about Alan Wake. We'll give you the breakdown from its creation to its critical reception. Then we'll take you on a deep dive into the game as we share our own experiences and opinions while playing it. We'll close with if we recommend it, who we'd recommend it to, and last but not least, our personal rating for the game. With that, let's avoid the darkness.
I like that. I think my headspace was in the opposite. I was like, let's step into the light. We got some half empty, half full happening here.
Ooh. I like it. All right. Game description.
Description. Yeah. So I'm going to read the description off of Steam, but I feel like it's kind of medium. So I'll add some spice to it. The description on Steam for Alan Wake: a dark presence in capitals. It's like capital D, capital P, which feels important. A dark presence stalks the small town of Bright Falls, pushing Alan Wake to the brink of sanity in his fight to unravel the mystery and save his love. And that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you added flair to that?
No, I didn't. That's just the thing. The reason that I'm kind of iffy about this, and I found that on so many of these Steam descriptions that we have read on this, is they don't actually describe at all what you're going to be doing.
Like the gameplay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like if you told me that was the premise, I would assume there would be some weird sanity mechanics like in Lovecraft. I would expect it to be very story driven, which is true. But that's probably what I get out of that, and I feel like you really miss all of the fact that it's a little bit of horror, a little bit of action. And so I don't know, I think it's a very medium thing, but at this point I have a very medium expectation for pretty much every description that we read. I feel like I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard to get it right and balance it right, because you want to generate the point of a game description is to generate excitement, and then get people to buy and play your game. And so then it's kind of but you have such little real estate, right? You need it to be snappy. And so if you're trying to get people in, you probably want to talk about the thing that your game is about the most, which for story driven games is the story.
I guess that's fair.
And so would it be jarring if we had a game description that was talking a little bit about the story, and then it was shine a flashlight and shoot, you know what I mean? And shoot people.
Ship it. No, that's fair. I think what's interesting is for all the games that are very story driven, it's really hard, I feel to get it sold to people, because they have to be somehow invested in the story within that very short blurb. I don't know. Feels rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I feel you. Okay. Right. How it's made.
Maddie.
All right. Game making. Maybe that's just the making of. Okay, so Remedy Entertainment is the studio that did Alan Wake, but Microsoft published the original one.
Huh,
yeah, Microsoft was the publisher. Epic published the remaster. So
I did see that.
Yeah, I saw that too. And their Epic is also publishing Alan Wake 2. Which is why it's not on Steam, because it's on Epic Game Store for PC.
Oh, I did read about that. Yes.
Yeah. So the remaster
curious.
and Alan Wake 2 are both not on Steam. They're on Epic Game Store for PC.
Wild.
Which is spicy. A little bit. I didn't look into it too much, but just slightly. Medium spice. Okay. So the first thing that I thought was interesting is during the development, Remedy had started with 25 employees and then grew to 45 over the course of the making of the game. And it took 7 years from starting development to release.
Oh my gosh. 7 years?
7 years. The first 2 years was them completely rebuilding their game engine. Oh. So before Alan Wake, they had done Max Payne 1 and 2.
Right.
And they had there's like problems with the game engine and they couldn't do what they wanted to do, so they completely rebuilt it. So that took 2 years.
Wow.
So actual development of Alan Wake didn't start until like 5 years before release, but that's still like a pretty long time, 5 years. And it's because originally they were building an open world game. Like Alan Wake was built open world, and that was the original vision. And they had to pivot a couple of years in because it just wasn't working. Like, it wasn't working with the story. It was technically too challenging.
Yeah.
And open world, when they were developing this for the Xbox 360, it just wasn't as prevalent.
Yeah.
And then I think with their story-driven approach, it's hard to have a linear story with an open world game.
I don't even, like in my head, I'm like, I just can't imagine this game at all as an open world game. And I will say, as we dig in, they did have a lot of unique locations. And I thought that was a little extravagant for a game that was so linear this way. I was surprised that they took that approach. But that makes so much more sense now that they had actually planned an open world. I just have no idea how that would play. You know?
Yeah, but they had to almost like completely rework the game when they decided to pivot.
Yeah.
A couple years in. So then that's kind of what took so long.
That makes more sense. So like a 3-ish years for what you see. Yeah, that makes sense.
What was fascinating is that I learned this from a LinkedIn post from the old CFO of Remedy Entertainment. He did like a looking back at my time on Remedy like 10 years later post, and then kind of talked about all of the trials and tribulations of the making of Alan Wake in this LinkedIn post.
I love that. LinkedIn is such a strange place.
It is a really strange place. Okay, so now once they've pivoted and they started really digging into it, they really wanted it to be about the details. They wanted to do a ton of research and add a ton of intricate details about the setting and the world and really build on that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 2 producers that took a trip to the Pacific Northwest for 2 weeks.
Oh.
And they came back with 40,000 photos. And also they went and visited like where Twin Peaks filmed around, Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And they did like a ton of research while they were in the Pacific Northwest. And they even mapped the stars. So the stars in the game match the night sky of the Pacific Northwest.
Christ. Wow.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. And the other fun thing about doing research is that they went to Crater Lake in Oregon, and that was the inspiration for Cauldron Lake.
I can see that. I definitely can see that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, the setting, because they did mention it was Pacific Northwest, but I was curious whether that meant Oregon or Seattle or Oregon or Washington. Yeah, but it definitely sounds like it's a mix of both. I thought they captured it really well, for what it's worth.
Mm-hmm.
It felt very Pacific Northwesty, and I was like, of course this is here.
Yeah. So kind of building on that, they talked a lot about in one of the videos that I found about the sound effects and like building the sound effects. And they worked with a company and sent a sound guy to the Pacific Northwest to camp for a week and had him record all of the sounds of nature. So
cool.
In the Pacific Northwest. And so that's like the forest, the wind, the birds, all of that was filmed like by this one sound guy that they sent to go camp.
That's
and then the other thing is, because Microsoft was publishing, they even asked Microsoft to go take reference photos because the studio's in Finland.
Right.
And so even after they did their Pacific Northwest trip, they had other things that they wanted more stuff about. And so then they would ask Microsoft employees to go take photos or record a soundbite of something.
Can you imagine being the dam, which
incredible.
For folks who don't know, dams are like our people that work directly, like they have like a publisher with them. Can you imagine being the dam and getting an email and it's like, hey, can you go out to like Crater Lake next week to take pictures for my studio? And you're like, sorry, manager, like that's where I'm gonna be.
Yeah.
That's so fun.
Like, it's so fun. Yeah. I would like to do that. That sounds great.
That's cool. I like that. That's fun.
Yeah. And then they also said that one of the biggest creative challenges in the sound effects was what the dark presence would sound like.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a little thing about how they made the dark presence sounds, which was super fascinating. So one of the sounds was they recorded a baby crying and then like slowed it down and then processed it a lot. And that was one of the sounds. And then the other one was a kitten meowing that they slowed down and processed, and then they combined those two things to create the sound of the dark presence.
Why a baby and a kitten? Like, who decided that those were like the things that would end up sounding scary?
I don't know.
You know, like, just
I
who
don't know.
thought of that?
It was just, it was very interesting.
Yeah. I need to go listen to it again now to see if I can actually hear that. Because in my head, I'm like, it didn't sound like that.
Well, I can send you the video too, because it shows him like slowing it down and then processing it. And then it turns from a baby crying into this like, you know.
Yeah, that's kind of
dark
fun.
presence sound. Yeah.
The things that sound people do are just like so far out of what I understand. The Foley artists and stuff. It's very neat.
Yeah. Okay. Few other things. Alice, they talked about a lot from a character building perspective because one of their main things was they wanted to make sure that Alice still seemed like a strong female character.
Interesting.
And not just like the wife worth saving. I don't know if they fully nailed that, to be honest.
Yeah.
But they did say that they explicitly were trying to make her seem strong and like a strong female character.
Yeah.
And that's why they added in the New York flashbacks to show their relationship and how Alice was worth saving.
Yeah.
And
interesting.
So
we can talk about that more. I don't know how I feel about that, but I don't feel bad. I don't know.
I don't feel bad, but I like I said, I don't know if they fully nailed that to me.
I agree.
But it's nice that they thought about it.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? Yes, I'll take that.
Yeah. And then the last thing is that originally when it released on the same day as Red Dead Redemption.
Oh.
So that's why it didn't have a ton of success on the first day of release. Like a bunch of publications were like, wow, Alan Wake totally failed. But it's because it released on the same day as Red Dead Redemption. And then with word of mouth over time, it ended up being a big commercial, like cult hit commercial success. But it just took a while because it was so overshadowed by Red Dead.
I wonder if that's why it took so long to get the sequel. Because I actually...
I'm sure we're going to learn that when we play Alan Wake 2. Because I was actually trying to avoid the Alan Wake 2 stuff. But there was a lot of articles about
Did you play the remastered version or the original
I played
version?
remastered.
Okay, all right. I did too. Because they actually make a note at the very end about how like the story will continue. And I didn't know if they added that during the remaster or if that existed in the original. Because if it existed in the original, I was so surprised it took so long. Because this game, what year was this game from? Like 2010?
Well, they did the DLC. I wonder if they were referencing the DLC.
Yeah, maybe. That's a good point.
Which I didn't get a chance to play, but the remaster had the DLC included in it. So.
Yeah. I read a little bit about the DLC, but I haven't played it yet.
Yeah. Okay. But that's it. That's all I had.
Yeah. I like it. That was fun. I like it. I like the dedication, really getting into it. It's cool.
Yeah.
So for critical reception, you kind of mentioned it earlier, it did become like a little bit of a cult hit. It has really good reviews, like consistently across the board. So like IGN has it a 7 out of 10, GameSpot 8 out of 10, OpenCritic 80%. Like it's all very good. The Steam reviews sit at very positive, and I feel like I was a little surprised it didn't end up being overwhelmingly positive. So I kind of skimmed through the reviews. I found some funny ones. I found some like realistic ones. And I will say that I kind of agree with everything that I've read a little bit. So one of the positive reviews that I read, which was pretty fun, was 13 and a half years later, I'm late to the party, and still this game has aged like fine wine. And I thought that was like really cute.
That is cute.
A lot of people with the positive comments, you can see they've come back. Like I read some older ones too, but there's a lot of new like influx of them because of Alan Wake 2 coming. And it was an interesting pattern because there are so many people that were like, I picked this game up however many years ago and I played a little of it and then never finished it. And then Alan Wake 2 is coming, so I decided to finish it. And that was kind of interesting from both a positive and a negative perspective, that it seemed like so many people dropped off at the beginning and didn't actually finish all the way through and actually actively had to come back to finish it like a decade later. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Some of the funny ones that I read, I feel like they were just too try hard, but I enjoy reading them anyway. My favorite one was, I fought a train with a flashlight, would recommend. Like, yeah, okay, yeah. The sad pieces that I actually read for this were, none of them were like that sad. Like all the not recommended, nothing felt like, oh my god, what a travesty of a game. Like nothing really hit that way. I feel like summarizing the majority of the not recommendeds that I saw was more about like the repetition of gameplay. There were quite a few comments that talked about really enjoying the story, but not the repetitiveness of the enemies that you were fighting and how you fought them. There was actually some like divergence from the earlier comment of like it aging like wine. A lot of people said that it still holds up today. Like a lot of comments were saying that. A lot of negative comments said it didn't. I don't know if they played the original version and not the remaster. My hunch,
well, if it's on Steam,
yeah,
then
exactly.
It's the original.
I'm like, my hunch is that because they played on Steam, their experience is probably going to be worse than the ones that we had with the remaster. Because I thought the remaster was like pretty reasonable for today's standards. I thought it was a pretty game, and like at no point would I've been like, oh god, this is made in 2010. So maybe as we get into it, like the remaster is the move and not the original. But it did seem like that was a core of the comments of people who didn't really like it. But yeah, so that's mostly it. It does seem like generally pretty positive. I'll be interested to see how you felt about it, because I know we pre-chatted a little bit about this one. But I'm excited to dig into it a little bit, because this story also has so many like questions in it. The ending feels kind of interesting, ambiguous. So I don't know. Yeah. I'm ready to get into it. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
First impressions. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
You can go first.
Okay. So first impressions, I will say going in, I've only played Control from Remedy.
Okay.
And have you played that one?
I played Control. I have not played Max Payne.
Yeah. So I played Control, and it's one of my favorite games. Like it's probably in my like top 10 favorite games of all time.
Yeah.
I really love it. And so I think I had pretty like high expectations for the story of Alan Wake, because I know that Control built on Alan Wake. Not like it's in the same universe as Alan Wake.
It
so
is?
it's not.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know
Alan
that.
Wake's whole thing is an AWE.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So like
0%
when you're in the
dots.
Bureau of Control, you find like files, like classified files about the Alan Wake AWE event. Yeah.
That's so cool. Okay, I'm going to have to re-look at that. I played Control quite a long time ago, so I didn't connect those dots. That's fun. I like that.
I think I played it during COVID, and I got really into it, and I played like the DLC and stuff too. And then Alan Wake is like actually legit in the DLC.
That's so cool.
But I didn't know him at the time, so it didn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I didn't really know that story at all. No. But anyways, my first impression was that I kind of was like, oh, interesting. It was very cinematic and very episodic. It was like watching an episode of television.
It's like Twilight Zone. I swear to God, that must have been an inspiration of
Night Springs.
Exactly.
No, I mean, absolutely. Yeah. And I liked it. I kind of liked that it was like this cheesy, but dark and fun, mysterious TV show. And it just kind of threw me off at the beginning in a good way. Like in a good way I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
And then during the first mission when you're in the nightmare, that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of where you start, is you're in a nightmare. And I thought it was just really funny when it's this like light god and you don't know what he's doing, and he's like, here's a flashlight, pick up the flashlight. And you pick up the flashlight and you make the bad guys go away, and then he's like, and here's a gun, kill him. I was like, wow, that escalated really quickly from a flashlight to a gun.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was funny. But yeah, so I think that those were my first impressions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was very... So I always try to go into these games not really knowing much about them if I can stand it. And
Totally,
this was one of the ones that I had pretty high expectations because Chris said this is one of his favorite games, like, ever. He's like, I love this game. And I had actually seen that intro nightmare scene before because he had picked Alan Wake up like a year ago because he wanted to replay it. I think because Alan Wake 2 was announced. So he was like, oh, I'm going to pick this up. And I only watched like the first scene of it, but I remembered like, oh, you're wandering around, it's dark outside, there are lights. Like, that's all I remembered. I didn't realize that it was going to be kind of jump scary. And and I was like, oh god, oh, is this what I'm in for? And like when you actually start to, like, I had remembered Chris telling me that he really enjoyed the story and it felt like a very like strong story game. And the game starts off with a difficulty level like selection, and
this is where I made my mistake.
Yeah, I picked easy because I wasn't sure what the difficulty would be. I was like, oh, do we fight in this game? Is this a like hard game? Is this going to be a game that has like good story but is so hard that I need to pick story mode so that I enjoy it? I wasn't sure, so I just picked easy and figured if it was too easy, I would still enjoy it because that's not a thing that I care about. But that one kind of threw me for a loop because I was like, oh, is this a fighting game so much so that it needs difficulty? That makes me nervous. And then as we learn later, you can't actually change those difficulty settings later.
You can't.
I'm so sorry, Maddie.
And I made a mistake.
I'm so sorry.
I picked normal difficulty, which is a mistake.
Yeah, we can get into like the combat and stuff later, but yes, definitely. I'm happy that I picked easy. The vibe of it I really enjoyed. I thought that the like art direction was really fun, and I did really like how they played between the light and dark within the nightmare portion at the right at the beginning, and I felt pretty interested with what was going on. And then I thought as soon as the nightmare ended and you get like the opening shot of him on a ferry boat going into Bright Falls, it felt very iconic.
Oh, that was really nice.
It was such an iconic shot. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought the music was like excellent. So I was really all in by the time that opening shot had been made. I was like, oh, this is going to be a cool game. Like, it's going to be interesting. And I was feeling pretty like good about it, minus the fact of like, oh god, how scary is this going to get? Because I was still a little nervous. So those were kind of how I was sitting.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree with what you said. The Bright Falls was a nice shot.
Yeah.
So I think what we should do is talk about it episodically because that's how the game is laid out, right?
Yeah, I like that.
How do we want to format?
Maybe we just tell people what the combat mechanic is so they understand how you play the game, because that'll be quick and it doesn't really change throughout, and then we can just dive in.
Yeah.
It'll be really straightforward. Does that sound good?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Go for it.
Cool. So the primary mechanic of this game is, one, you're like kind of on rails-ish. Like you are following a pretty linear path. Contrary to the previous
it's
open
absolutely
world
linear.
Stuff. Yeah. And the main mechanic of the game is in the dark, there are monsters. We'll talk about why and how and all that kind of fun stuff when we get into the story. But you have a flashlight, generally. You have weapons of various kinds, like different guns, pretty much flares, things that create light. And you're really just playing the game to, like, the combat portions of the game is literally just, like, shine the light on them, break their dark shield, and then shoot them / kill them with your other weapons. And that's literally it. You have, like, objects that get possessed by the darkness. You shine the light on them. That's really, really it. And so when you think about the game as we talk through it, as we get into each of the monstery areas, that's really all you're doing. It's very straightforward from a gameplay perspective, which is why I think that people talked a little about it being repetitive.
Yeah. And you have different guns.
Mm-hmm.
Did you talk about that?
I mean, I didn't talk about each one, but yeah, you have different guns.
That adds a little variety. That's kind of what I was trying to get at there. Should you use
your rifle or your shotgun or your pistol, Maddie?
Or your flare gun.
The flare gun is a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other items that you could possibly have are flares. So not flare gun, but flares. And flashbangs.
Right.
And then what else? From a other gameplay perspective, there's collectible things throughout. So the most obvious one is coffee thermoses.
Which is confusing still. Why coffee thermoses? Why do you collect that?
Because he's a writer. Like, you know what I mean? Oh, I mean, why do you collect it? I don't know. I stopped carrying it because I started collecting them at first and I was like, wait, this isn't actually doing anything. And because I thought, maybe you could exchange it for upgrades of some sort, but no. Like it is just a collectible.
Exist. Yeah.
There's other collectibles too. Like there's something with signs.
What?
And then, there's like something with like reading a certain amount of signs.
Oh, I didn't know that.
An achievement. And then another one is the Night Springs.
Oh,
like if you find the Night Springs episodes and then the radio shows.
Chris made us watch every single Night Springs episode.
I watched every single Night Springs episode.
Why? Why did you people want to do this? I don't understand.
I like Night Springs. Although it dropped off in quality, which we'll talk about. But I really liked the first couple Night Springs episods that I found.
Okay.
And so I was determined to find the rest of them.
Okay.
But I think I found all of them, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there's the kind of the other gameplay elements. There's like a collection aspect to it.
Episode 1. Okay,
so there's the gameplay mechanics that we kind of start learning about in episode 1. Right off the bat, you start fighting people in the nightmare, but then you wake up from the nightmare and just a really quick summary of the story. I think I should do a summary and then we can dig into interesting points?
Yeah, I like
maybe?
that. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm really going to try to make it quick. I'm going to do like a 2-minute.
Okay.
One.
All right.
No, I have anxiety. No, it's going to be
Maddie's quick story is going to be the next 20 minutes. Thank you guys for listening.
They are taking a vacation to Bright Falls.
Who's
just
they?
The two of them. Alice and Alan Wake, who is a famous writer. And they are on the ferry. They arrive in Night Falls, and they're supposed to get the key to their cabin from someone called Mr. Stuckey. However, when they go into the place that they're supposed to meet Mr. Stuckey, he is not there. They run into a really creepy old lady, or Alan Wake does, sorry. The wife is going and getting gas for the car or something.
Yeah, who splits up to do that? We'll talk about it. That's fine.
Yeah, so he runs into this really creepy old lady who's like, here's your keys. And he's like, not weird at all. Not weird at all.
Totally.
I'm not even going to mention it to my wife because it's so not weird.
Yeah.
And then they arrive at the Cauldron Lake cabin that is the centerpiece for the game.
Yeah.
And when they get there, Alice, his wife, says, hey, I have a surprise for you. Boom, it's a typewriter. Hey, I thought that since you're like relaxing on vacation, maybe you want to write. And we kind of learned that he's been in a writer's block situation. For years. And then he gets really triggered by it and is really upset and is kind of a dick. And then he leaves the house to go decompress. Then when he's out there, he hears Alice screaming. He goes back, Alice is gone, and sees her floating to the bottom of the lake. And he dives in and then wakes up in a crashed car.
Yeah.
And that's where we start to really play. That's when we find the first manuscript page.
Yeah. You want to pause there and talk about that setup?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was super intrigued, but I felt like there are some pieces like you were saying that I'm like, I don't know if I'm on board. Like the fact that he gets the creepy key from the old lady. So he gets the creepy key from this old lady, and then she gives him the address after that. And they go to the place, and Alice, the wife, is like, this doesn't look like the pictures. And I'm like, at no point did you decide, like, that wasn't the moment where you're like, oh, maybe this isn't our cabin? Like, you just didn't ask anybody that? Like, why didn't you
Is this
bring
just
it
like
up?
men? Is
Right?
this just like why men, like what is this?
Like, are they too scared to ask, like, for directions? They just see the right. I just don't
Yeah.
understand, because clearly, if I had met a creepy old lady in the dark bathroom of the back hallway in this diner with, like, creepy
And she was also like,
flickering lights,
you know?
and it's like, here's your key.
Yeah.
And you're like, I wouldn't
She's
have
like,
taken the key.
I'll be checking in on you later. And then like,
I'd be like,
No,
where's
not
the
weird at all.
local inn? Please,
weird at all.
God. And so
Get me
that
outta
part was
here.
a little wild to me, because
Yeah.
I don't, like, this was 2010. The internet did exist. MapQuest existed. Like, you would be able to know that your cabin wasn't actually in the middle of the lake. And Alice even mentions it. She's like, this is weird. And Alan's like, yeah. You're like, okay, that's fine.
All right, dude.
Um,
Yeah. So the other thing about the setup that just was like, dude, like when he got so triggered just by the typewriter, I was like,
yeah.
you are such a dick, bro. He's
Right?
like, I gotta go cool down. He's such a dick in that moment. It's
Very
like, dude,
dramatic.
yes, he's so dramatic.
Yeah. And, like, you could see it as a moment where, like, clearly he's been struggling. It's been like 2 years or something like that since his last book has come out. He clearly needs a little
Yeah.
help. And if you're on vacation and feeling relaxed, like, why not give it a shot? And it's not like she held up a knife to him and said, like, Jesus
No.
Christ, write this manuscript or I'm dumping you. Like, she's just like, hey, I got you a typewriter.
Yeah. And she's so nice about it.
Yeah.
The other thing that we learn in this like setup is that Alice is super afraid of the dark.
Yeah, you're right. Which
Which is gonna come into play a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, so when you were saying earlier that they try to make Alice like a strong
that
woman,
I was like,
yeah,
no, incorrect.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, you made her so scared of the dark that literally the lights go off and she starts wailing. Like,
yeah,
that to me doesn't scream strong,
Yeah.
independent woman.
No.
Ah.
That's why I was like, I don't think they fully succeeded in that, and
Yeah.
I think it all goes back to how afraid of the dark she was. Like,
yeah, it was
I actually
debilitating.
don't know
is
if
what
that
it seems
added.
like.
Yeah, I don't know if that added anything to the story. If I'm being honest, like her
Mhm.
being afraid of the dark, like let's picture this story, but without that element. I don't think anything
the
has
same.
changed.
Yeah. I think the thing maybe that could change is the perception of how scary her situation was, maybe. But even then, it's still
I
kind
mean,
of
if you're
horrifying.
trapped at the
Yeah.
bottom of a lake,
Like, even in the light,
that's
that would
pretty
be
fucking
scary.
scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
With like an
yeah.
old lady like whispering in your ear, like
Oh, wait, no, I will say one thing, and actually, like, I can dig into more of it once we get deeper in the story, but there was a period of time where I really did think that Alan was crazy, and so the fact that she was so scared of the dark made me think that he had conjured up all of this fake stuff because Alex was so scared of the dark that now he was conjuring up this thing that was like being scared of the dark. And I did actually think about that. I don't know if they intended that, but I did for a while think that Alan
that's an
had conjured
interesting
all
point.
of this like made up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's move to episode
Yeah,
2
let's
because
keep going.
we
Well,
have 6.
There's one thing before we go in, just so people understand.
Yeah.
Is like after the car crash, he's lost all of his memory of 1 week.
Great point. I forgot
Yes.
to mention that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
So he's like diving into the lake,
Mhm.
and then he wakes up in a car crash a week later with
Yeah.
no memories.
Exactly. And then you start like fighting the bad guys, which are actually members of the town. You kill like half the town in this game. This town, I don't know how it still survives. And so then like at the end of the episode, you actually run into the sheriff and you're like, please God, I need help finding my wife. Like, we were here a week ago. I don't know what's happened. We are staying at the lake. And then you learn the dun 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 before episode 2, which is there is no house on the lake.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yes, that's right. No house
The
on the lake.
sheriff is like, it sank. Their island
Like the
sank in the
70s.
60s
Oh, yeah,
or
yeah.
70s. Yeah.
Forever ago. Yeah, which was
And then
actually a
you're
pretty
like,
dramatic twist. I was like,
whoa.
ooh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
And then I will say the other thing is you get your first manuscript page, and those are pages that you find in the game as you're going along, and it is a book that Alan Wake has written. And it seems to correspond with the events of what's currently happening.
Yeah, it was really trippy. Yeah.
So it's very interesting how you're finding pages, and sometimes you find a page of something that you just went through.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you find a page of something in the future that then you walk into.
Yeah.
And so that's like an interesting element that you start to get in episode 1.
Yep.
Okay, episode 2, do you want to summarize that one?
Sure. So, sorry, let me scroll down to my episode 2 pieces. Oh, yeah, okay. So, first, they do like previously on Alan Wake, like it's a TV show.
Yeah.
Which is super cute. I actually really loved that aesthetic that they did. I was like, oh, this is literally like a TV show. I liked it. So for episode 2, it starts in a flashback. You start in New York from a few years earlier, and you are in your apartment in New York with Alice. The power goes out, and you tell this sweet story with Alice about this clicker that your mom gave you that helps, like, you know, turn on the lights, get rid of the dark, makes you safe, all this kind of stuff. And in this moment, I thought, like, what does Alice do when she sleeps if she's so petrified of the dark that the power goes out and she's, like, shaking? Like, does she sleep with the lights on? I'm sorry, that's my commentary. But I was just very surprised. And then you do the cute little clicker story. It pops us back into Bright Falls in present day. And you are at the local police station. The police station, you're like talking with, like, you're supposed to be going to talk to the sheriff, but instead you start running into some of the townsfolk, like, in the station first. So you run into this, like, creepy Miss Weaver character, which we'll see, like, go throughout the story. And she's, like, super hunchy and creepy. And she is there to, like, clearly she knows something is weird about the light in the dark, but you don't really know what. And then you get a phone call while you're in the police station that says, I have Alice, and you better come and get her, and I have proof. And you have to, like, go, they had their, like, her license sitting in the truck, in a truck bed, like this old decrepit truck bed. You go grab the license, and you're like, oh my God. And he's like, you need to meet me at Lover's Peak at midnight, and then we'll meet and talk about how you get Alice back. So you end up going to this creepy, like, forest cabin area with Barry, who we haven't met yet. Barry is your agent, and he has shown up because you disappeared for a week, and he's like, what the F is going on? So
and he's also your best friend.
Yeah.
He's Alan Wake's best friend.
Yeah, that's a good call. Yes. And so you and Barry bebop on over to the little Rangers area to get a cabin in this, like, foresty, hill, mountainy area. And the walk and climb you do solo, like, Barry stays back at the house. So you're at midnight, you're gonna go meet this strange ransom dude, and then you run into a guy who is, like, here to fight with you, and he helps you fight off the darkness as you're, like, trying to meet it. And then it turns out that he was the kidnapper the whole time? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Yeah. And you immediately notice, for some reason, Alan Wake is like, I think this guy's the kidnapper. I didn't think he was, but he apparently was in this scene. And you eventually, like, call him out on it. You end up falling and you get split off. You go back to the house where Barry's at, and he's being, like, massively attacked by birds. And at that point, he's like, oh God, we need to do something. What do we do? And you get a phone call from a waitress that you ran into earlier from the diner, who says, hey, I found your manuscript pages, which you care about now because the ransom guy was like, the only way for you to get Alice back is to give me your manuscript pages, which was very interesting and confusing. And then it turns out that the waitress is being controlled by the creepy old lady that gave you the keys. And then that's the end of episode 2. Let's talk about it. So how did you feel about episode 2? I feel like we got a lot of glimpses into what the actual story was in episode 2.
Yeah, so this is where my experiences with this game really diverged.
Ooh.
I was super interested in the story, and I absolutely hated the gameplay. Like, absolutely hated the gameplay.
Yeah.
This is when I texted you, Bridget, I am not having fun. Like, I am literally not having fun. I hate this.
Yeah.
That happened in episode 2. So for those listening, I played on normal difficulty, and I think that is a mistake if you were looking for more of a story-driven experience.
Yep.
I think even the normal difficulty was quite challenging when you're fighting these shadow monsters because resources are very scarce.
Yep.
So I was running out of bullets a lot. The flashlights were running out of batteries a lot.
Oh.
And I was dying a lot. And when you die, it's checkpoint based. And so if you're kind of farther along and you haven't hit a checkpoint in a while, then you get put back quite some time. And so it just felt very grindy to me.
Yeah.
And there was one part when I was going to Lover's Peak where I was just completely stuck. I could not get past it. It was so many people, and I was so low on ammo and flashlights, and I was like, I don't know where I would have gotten a resupply. Because sometimes there's these, like, hints that there's, like, a resupply box.
Yeah, with, like glowing yellow arrows.
Glowing yellow arrows, and there hadn't been one that I passed by, and I literally was so frustrated. I took so much time to try to get through this, and I could see a light in the distance that I knew I was supposed to run to. I didn't have like a thought of, I need to kill all these people, because there was just too many for the amount of ammo that I had. And so I knew that the thing that you were supposed to do was to run to the light in the distance, because once you got under like a street light, you were good. And I could not get to it. I kept dying. It was so frustrating. That's when I texted you, I'm not having fun at all.
Yeah.
And DK actually had to come and get me through.
Yeah.
Because he's just naturally like better at video games than I am.
Chris is so good. It makes me so mad.
I mean, at the same time, we have to realize that we grew up in a time where...
It's true. I did not grow up playing video games like this. I didn't do that.
Not
I had
like
a lot
this.
less practice.
Yeah. I think that really matters.
Yeah.
But anyways, he came, got me through it, literally his first try. I was so irritated, but also thankful. Because he was like, you just have to... The other thing that was very frustrating about the controls is that dodge and run were the same button. Trash.
Yeah.
Trash design.
I
absolutely
didn't
trash
ever
design.
Dodge things correctly because I was constantly running.
But like sometimes instead of running, it would do a dodge, and you're like, "No, bitch, run, run, stop dodging."
Yeah, I think
fucking run.
What's funny and sad, I'm so sorry for your experience, Maddie, is this area to me was also where this is the first time I ran out of ammo, and I was on easy mode and I ran out of ammo. And I remember complaining to Chris as I was playing. I was like, what do they want me to do right now? I literally don't know what to do. I can't kill it. And he's like, just run past it. And I was like, can I do that? Because they keep following me and throwing axes at my head. So like, I just keep getting whacked. These people have excellent aim. And it was really, really frustrating. And it happened, I'm wondering if it happened in the same spot that yours happened, just at like an easier level. Because it didn't take me super long. It wasn't incredibly frustrating, but it was still like it existed and I was annoyed by it. But I thought even easy wasn't that easy. Like there were times where I was feeling pretty frustrated with different parts of it. And I'm very thankful that I never ended up picking hard. The other thing that I really disliked about it that I thought really started to show in this level was the delay that it takes to do some of the actions were so large that I hated it. It was like, for example, when you have flares, you throw a flare and it lights up on the ground, and that like dispels, like it gets all of the baddies to back up because they don't like the light. And there would be times where I had like 4 of them coming at me. And so I'd go to whip out a flare, throw it really fast so then I could like mow them down. Took like 3 seconds to throw a freaking flare. And then anytime you threw a flare grenade, unless you hit them like directly like on their body, if you threw it to put it in like the middle of them, it would bounce for again like 3 or 4 seconds. And so by that time they'd already ran all by.
Yeah.
So you'd be lucky if you actually got them all. So I was really frustrated at this point with the delay of so much of the combat.
It's that classic horror game thing, and Resident Evil does this too, but I think Resident Evil does this in a better way, where movement is like purposefully, and like things are purposefully like slow.
Yeah.
So, like reloading a gun, it's like purposefully slow to increase your tension and create that anxiety. But also, I fucking hate it.
Yeah,
like, I hate it.
Yeah, I hate it. I feel like instead of increasing anxiety for me, it just increased frustration. Like,
exactly.
It didn't make me feel like, oh no, I've got to reload. This is scary. It was like, Jesus Christ, reload the gun.
Yes. Yeah.
It felt broken.
And that's why with like the dodge and the run being the same button, like I said, like I just was getting so frustrated. I was like, run, bitch, like run.
And he was so slow when he ran.
Yes.
And he
had no stamina. Like, bro, no exercise.
No stamina.
Like you're just this unfit.
So slow. And there'd be moments where I'm like, literally the floor is falling out beneath me and you are slow jogging. I'm like, move your ass.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
So that was one moment. This happened for me in episode 2.
Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to talk about particularly is whenever the military guy or whatever, the kidnapper, when he was like, you have to give me the manuscript by tomorrow and then I'll give you your wife back. And Alan Wake literally is like, can I have a week to finish it? Like such an author. Like I just thought it was hilarious. Like his wife is kidnapped and he's like I need a week. Please give me a week to finish my writing. That just cracked me up.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, my wife can wait another week with the
like
kidnapper. Because I need more time to finish my book and make it perfect.
So stupid.
And then the other thing is at the very beginning or end of the first episode is when we get our first Night Springs episode.
I don't remember where. I didn't document
So Night Springs is one of... I really loved the Night Springs, actually. It's probably one of my favorite parts of the game. And... it's I grew up watching Twilight. My dad's like a big sci-fi person. Yeah. And so when they had Night Springs is obviously an like homage to Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Sorry, when I said Twilight, I meant Twilight Zone, not Twilight the vampire.
You got Edward on the brain?
No. But Night Springs is essentially Twilight Zone. And the first episode was just so good and so perfectly captured Twilight Zone.
Can you remind me what it was? Yeah.
Yep. It was called Quantum Immortality. Mm-hmm. And did you watch that one?
I mean, I watched them, but I'll be honest, I did not pay attention to them a lot. Like, I literally
we have
sat
such
there.
Different brains sometimes.
The time I spent I was just like, I can't process any of this. So, like, I honestly couldn't name one if you asked me to.
So I think they started really strong, and then I'll talk about, like, I think they kind of fell off towards the end, the Night Springs episodes. But at least the first one was really strong. It was called Quantum Immortality. Mm-hmm. And it was about a scientist that invented a machine that made sure that he was always in the best version of a timeline.
Oh, that's fun.
And so what happens is he has this machine going, and he's like, so I have a gun. I'm going to put it to my head, and I'm going to shoot it. But in this timeline, I'm going to live because I'm in the best timeline. Whereas another timeline version of me is going to die. Right. And so it's called quantum suicide. Mm-hmm. And, or quantum immortality, right? Because in this version of his timeline, he's always going to live, and so it's immortality in a way.
Yeah.
And then very classic Twilight Zone. A student, it's a professor, and he's presenting, and a student in the back accidentally like shuffles, and it makes the machine unplug, and he doesn't realize it, and he like does it again, and then actually dies. And that's like the end of the episode. And he's like, Night Springs. It was. I just really liked it, and it was it's a very good episode. And the second one that happened in episode 2 was called Man in the Mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And it started where a guy had attacked and I think killed another guy at a baseball game.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, definitely killed, and like set him on fire or something.
Jesus Christ.
And he had it was at his like son's baseball game. And the police were trying to figure out what happened because they caught the guy that killed him. And he was like, why did you kill that guy at your son's baseball game?
Yeah.
Like, why did you do that? And the guy's just kind of sitting there like menacingly. And then he's like, why don't you ask my son? And then he's like, we did talk to your son. And you know what? It's really weird. Your son said that you were wearing a white shirt, not a blue shirt, when you took him to the game today. And he was like, and then the police officer was like, and you know what? The victim was so burned that we couldn't ID him, but he had a white shirt on, but you're wearing a blue shirt. And then it turns out that he like murdered a version of himself, and he's like maniacally laughing, and the police officer is like, who are you? And then he's like, look in the mirror. And then it's like, you know.
Now, okay, I have a question about these. Were they, because it was hard to tell. It was like little tiny fake TV screens, right? Were they live action?
They were live action.
Okay, that's what I
think they
thought.
were live action
That's what
with
I
like
thought.
a filter on it, like a black and white, and then kind of like pixelated. But
Yeah, because we also see later, we start seeing Alan in TVs. I don't remember when that starts happening. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about it when we get there. But
And that's also live action.
Yeah, and that also looked live
Yeah.
action to me. And I was like, is that live action? Those eyes look too creepy for this to not be live action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, I thought those were fun. I think those are the two ones that I'm going to mention because I think they get a little bit less fun from there, or not less fun, but just less creative to me. One of them is about like a alien impregnate something or other.
That's
and
so
then,
old at this point. I'm over it.
Yeah. And then another one was a guy dreams. Oh, okay, that one was kind of cool. So the last one that I'll talk about with Night Springs, and then Night Springs segment of this podcast episode. There's one called Dream of Dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And in it, it's like all of these people, and they're like, we want to make sure that this guy is happy and doesn't wake up because we're in his dream.
Oh.
Do you remember that one?
No.
And we want to stay alive, so we don't want him to wake up. And we think that this is the guy that's the one that's asleep. So make sure he stays happy and make sure he's all good so that he doesn't have a nightmare and wake up.
Yeah.
And then they accidentally had pinpointed the wrong guy, and it was a different guy who is the dream. And then as he's waking up, one of the other guys in the dream is like, no, I have a wife and kid. And then he wakes up. And so obviously they're like dead.
Yeah. I like that.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought, I remembered I had skimmed by it, but I think it'd be good to talk about it now. And then I can talk about like the hypothesis that I had at this point in the story is, so like we know Alice has been kidnapped theoretically, and we have started to meet all these weird townspeople. We know that something clearly is going on, like the townspeople are being possessed. And at the police station, I forgot, you met Dr. like Emile, and he says that like, I can't remember if during the typewriter scene when when Alice gives you the typewriter, she also mentions like Dr. Emile's book. She like gives you a book or something.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And so she has actually reached out to this Dr. Emile character theoretically, and he meets you at this police station, and you punch him in the face because he's like,
I forgot about that.
I have a institute, you should come out. It seems like you're having some mental instability given you've lost like, you know, a whole week of time and you think that like your wife has been kidnapped or whatever, or not kidnapped, he doesn't know, but that your wife has disappeared. So like clearly you need some like mental help, and you punch this doctor. And so I wondered at this point in the episode, this is where my hypothesis around it all being made up came from, is because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I thought that one, Alice had been dead a long time. I thought that's why they gave us the 3-year flashback. And then like when we had shown the diner, how they split up and he went to the diner and she went to go get gas, I was like, she doesn't exist. I'm like, Alice isn't real. Alice died 3 years ago. And
Oh.
so, like, that was my hypothesis, is she had died 3 years ago. That's why he had writer's block, because he was, like, depressed from her death. And all of
Mm.
this trip was, like, a weird, like, episode conjured because he was depressed about Alice's earlier death, that, like, light and dark was her thing. She's really scared of it. So he's conjured that to be the enemy and the thing that he's scared of. And
Wow.
I honestly like thought that that's where this was headed, is that she was going to just be like dead the whole time. And
Yeah.
I thought that it connected a lot of the dots in the story that they were setting up, because it also like he irrationally blew up at her at like the getting help and the like
He
typewriter
did.
thing. And I was like, maybe that's him like internally reacting to not being able to handle like facing it, and then her just like weirdly disappearing like that in such a supernatural way. I was like, that feels weird. The fact that no house was there, I'm like, I really feel like he's conjured this all. And getting
Yeah,
a
that's
glimpse.
that.
Yeah, I just, that's where my head was at
And
this
I bet
point.
episode 4 at the beginning threw you a loop because of how it started, huh?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Let's
we'll get
let's
there.
do a quick little summary of episode 3, and
Yeah.
then we should probably go maybe a little faster
That's
because
fine.
we're
That's
already
fine.
at an hour. But episode 3, really quick summary. So you go to the trailer park because you're going to find Rose, the waitress,
Mhm.
and you drink coffee that she gives you, and she's acting really strange.
Super weird.
And you got poisoned, and you wake up after you have been poisoned because you had passed out.
Mhm.
And that is when the police get called, and that is when we get the introduction of Agent Nightwing,
Mhm.
who is a FBI agent who has now got pulled into this, and this FBI agent has it out for Alan Wake, and you don't know why.
Yep.
And he's fucking wild, and like he's like shooting at civilians
Yeah,
just to
this
get to Alan
dude.
Wake.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's pretty crazy. The other character that I'll mention at this point is, I kind of mentioned the radio shows.
Yep.
So obviously this town has a radio guy, and he's always on the radio.
Mhm.
And so just keep that in mind as we keep going with the story, because you've been listening to the radio show in spurts, and you met him at the very beginning on the ferry as well. Yeah, he made this really weird comment when he was like, "You have a lovely wife, if you don't mind me saying." And I was like, yeah, I mind.
That's just
fucking
something
weirdo.
sweet little old people do.
But it's such a weird comment. You have a lovely wife, if you don't mind me saying. So weird. Creep.
I liked Pat. He stood up for us.
No, I ended up liking him. I was just like rough
Rough
first
at
impression.
beginning. Yeah.
But you're obviously the police and the FBI agent aren't gonna let Alan Wake go, so he tries to escape, and he leaves Barry behind. He's like, "Sorry,
Yeah.
Barry.
See you, Barry.
I gotta get out.
Get fucked.
I gotta get out of here." And he runs away, and you go to the main goal is you're trying to go to a coal mine to meet the kidnapper.
Yeah.
At this point. And then you get to the coal mine, and he hadn't shown up. And then he's like, no, meet me over here.
So stupid.
And so then you have to go to another place. And then I think that's the end of episode 3, right?
Yeah, I think for the most part, like I
cut out a lot that I feel like was just noise.
Well, so there's one thing that I think wasn't noise, but
Okay.
it's not actually related to like the individual plot that happens. You learn at the beginning of this episode about what originally went down at the creepy house years ago in the 70s. This is where you start to learn it. And so you also get some backstory about Zane, who was an author that stayed in this house and he had a girlfriend named Barbara Jagger. And Barbara, oh, I lost you. Are you back?
Uh-oh. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Do you still hear me? Am I here?
Yeah,
Maddie?
I still hear you.
Maddie?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Where are you? Do I have the internet?
Hello?
Is that me? Do you have the internet?
Bridget?
Ah! I have internet. Hey, so I'm still recording my audio. Oops. Apparently my internet's out.
Oh.
And hold on, I've got to get my headphones onto this thing so I can actually hear you. My internet's out, which is just excellent. So, if I can get Bluetooth on, I can FaceTime you on my phone.
Wonderful.
But you were on FaceTime. Okay, can you say words?
Okay.
Okay,
Hi.
I can hear you. Okay, great.
Yay!
Yeah. My internet apparently just disconnected, so I don't have internet anymore. So I'm glad I have unlimited data on my phone. It's fine. I will go ahead and I stopped my video because I can't do video on my phone.
I stopped my video too.
Yeah. And so I can record. I'll do a new one on my laptop for the second half, but otherwise I can keep going.
Cool.
I think. I just have to flip things around. Ooh, that video is so much worse, but that's fine. Whatever. Okay, I'm back. We can do it. We can keep going.
All right, give me a second.
Okay.
I have to restart my video. Okay.
Okay. Sorry. Ugh, gross. I don't know what's wrong with my internet.
Technical difficulties.
I'll fix it later. It's fine.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, where were we? We were talking about Barbara Jagger, who's the girlfriend.
Yes, because we got the background
yes.
with Zane, a little bit of it.
And we learned that she had drowned, and that's all we know. He was an author. He was in the lake house, and Barbara drowned the week before, and then like the house went down and he died or something like that. And that's like all we know, right?
Wow.
Yeah, but that's like
that.
Yeah, that's like a you start to get sprinkles of it in this one. And other than that, this one like is a pretty straightforward story. Like I didn't think there was anything that stood super out during this one, except I was very annoyed that when he goes to meet the guy originally, the kidnapper at the mine,
he wasn't there.
Whatever, he wasn't there, and instead of like leaving to go figure out what it was, you wait conveniently until the middle of the night when it's creepiest, and then you're like, okay, we're just gonna go somewhere else. I was like, okay, that's a little dumb, but fine.
Yeah,
fine.
I mean, it's just a classic like extending the plot a little bit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so the gameplay mechanic that I have a gripe with that I ran into, or that I started having a gripe with during episode 3 really quickly, I really hated how when you picked up something, it auto-equipped it.
Because that happened to me so many times with the flare gun. Yeah.
With the flare gun. So for those listening, if you haven't played the game, flare gun is OP. Like, it is the best thing that you can have. It, like, I beat a boss with one hit with the flare gun. You know what I mean? It's that kind of power. So it's very rare when you pick it up. And because when you picked stuff up, it auto-equipped it, a lot of the times what would happen is because you find things and you're in a stressful situation, but because there's like little dudes around you, but you don't want to waste your flare gun ammo on like a normal enemy. But you would find it and you'd pick it up, and then sometimes you'd be stressed, forget to equip something else, and then you'd fire your flare gun and waste your fucking flare gun ammo. Yeah. And so multiple times I actually just restarted because I didn't want to waste the flare gun ammo.
Oh, Jesus.
So I just restarted from the last checkpoint because I was like, well, I'm not going to waste it. Like, I want to save that for the bosses, you know?
Yeah.
Like the boss shadow people. And that was very irritating to me.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I didn't even realize it was happening at first. I thought I was just pressing the wrong buttons. And then I realized that it was auto-equipping every time. And flares are usually what you find in those secret caches with the yellow arrows. And so you do pick them up kind of frequently. Not like a lot, but it's the random thing that you pick out without noticing it because you're like looting a crate, right? And then you get the next battle and then you just shoot off your flare that you just got. Sad.
Yeah.
I will say this is also the place where I was starting to get also tired of the gameplay, and I made it through most of episode 3 and then handed it off to Chris, and he played most of the rest of the game
4, 5,
for me.
6,
Yeah, honestly. And I would like to emphasize to our listeners that I feel like I was very capable and I could have done it. I was over it. It was annoying, and it's not the kind of combat that I like. I wanted to figure out the story. I thought the story was super interesting. Could care less about fighting all the things in between it. It got to the point where I was like, I wish I could just fast travel through the game and get to the cutscenes because this is awful.
So I had the same thing. Episode 3 was the last one that I actually played. And episode 4, 5, 6, I watched a no commentary gameplay YouTube video for the rest of it. So I did watch like all of it being played. It wasn't I wasn't only watching the cutscenes because you miss stuff if you only watch the cutscenes.
Yeah.
So I watched like no commentary gameplay. So shout out to Survival Horror Network because they posted. I love when there's no commentary gameplay videos. Yeah. So it was just a full playthrough of they have all the episodes, obviously, but I watched 4, 5, 6.
Yeah. I mean, I got commentary because Chris has commentary, but
Well, yes, but you know what I mean.
Pretty much what I did for 4, 5, and 6, and I am not upset with my decisions. I made the right decisions, and it felt like they had already built it very episodically, like it was a TV show, and I just felt like I was watching the TV show. We turned off the lights. It was fun. Like, Chris would run around to get all the, like, manuscript pages and stuff you keep finding. I'm curious, I think at this point too, and we actually might have gotten a hint of it in the one before, when you were talking about, the manuscript pages seem to be the, like, what's happening in the game. I think they start to emphasize that even more in episodes 2 and 3. And I think Alan even, like, confronts it and be like, it seems like the things I'm writing are becoming reality. Yeah.
Yeah. He just explicitly says it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I needed the explicit saying. I was like, you can't give us a little credit. Like, I figured it out pretty quickly. But I don't know if that's part of the, like, cheesy thing that they were going for to, like, just feed it to you in a way.
Yeah.
Because even in the previously on, they were like, these manuscript pages are happening in real life or whatever.
Yeah. And it was pretty obvious. No.
Okay, so should we do episode 4?
We should, but I think we should reiterate the end of episode 3.
Go for it.
You find the kidnapper. You also found a really creepy room that had, like, Thomas Zane's name scribbled all over it, which was the world's creepiest thing in the history of the world. It was CW plus TZ, and I would like everyone to know that I guessed that it was the creepy Weaver, the Cynthia Weaver lady writing this. So, like, that creepy room. And then you find the kidnapper, and the last thing he says is...
Obviously, he doesn't have Alice.
He's like, we don't have his wife, and then he gets sucked into a tornado, and that's the end. So you know that he wasn't actually the kidnapper. And you fall into the
lake?
Yeah, I think so. You fall into the lake, yes.
And then you fall into the lake, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you like, do a flare so that the tornado doesn't get you too.
Yeah.
And then you fall into the lake.
Yeah. And then we're on to episode 4.
Okay. Episode 4, you wake up and wait, you're in a mental ward.
Yes.
And the doctor's like, Alan, your wife died. You're making things up to process your emotions. And you must have been feeling real hot right now.
I was feeling so good. I was like, look at me. I did it. I'm like, eat this, bitches.
Yeah.
I was wrong. I just want everybody to know that I was wrong.
Yeah. But then Barry is there and you're like, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Then the doctor's a liar.
Weird. That was so weird. I'm like, they just kidnapped Barry and put him in this room. Not kidnapped him, but, like, locked him in this room. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's so funny. So then you find out pretty quickly that the doctor is a liar. But before you, like, go full, like, escaping this lodge, you meet these 2 older guys who are rock stars, like old rock stars, and they're brothers. And they're very cool. I like them a lot.
Yeah.
And they tell you that they know that they kind of start hinting that on this island, creative things come to life, like music or like writing, like comes to life. So this type of thing had happened to them with their songs.
Yeah.
And they tell Alan to go to their farm and find out more.
Yep.
And so Alan gets Barry, and then they escape and they go to the farm. And then while they're at the farm, I really liked this scene, actually, where they play the rock music on stage.
On stage, yes.
And Barry's doing, like, the lighting, and Alan is like shooting the things. Yeah. I thought that was very cool.
It was a really cool. That was probably my favorite part. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was really cool. And then after they find out more stuff from the farm, which I can't remember what they found out,
it was a record. So what they were looking for was, like, a song on a record that theoretically would have more information about what to do next. And so it was actually like it was kind of neat. It was like a secret riddle hidden in a song about, like, finding the Lady of the Light. Which was pretty fun.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
So and then we get plastered, just stupid.
And then they got drunk, and I was like, why did they do that?
Why would you ever do that? I don't understand. Life or death, and you're like, why not get super drunk in the middle of the night at this creepy farm? That makes a lot of sense. Stupid.
Yeah, and then what's the ending? Because I don't understand my notes that I took.
So
they get, all I have is they got drunk, what the F, and then I wrote Zane helped him escape.
So they get drunk. They get drunk, and he has a vision about what has happened the night that Alice, disappeared. And so he actually sees what happens and starts to realize that the creepy old lady was controlling him writing this book in order to make her more powerful. So you have like this weird drunken
that's right.
night vision. Yes.
That's right.
And the old lady starts blaming him and telling him what to do. And you start learning that Alan, in order to he had enough consciousness to start writing himself into the story as the protagonist. And then he wrote in his own method of escape, which was using Zane to help him escape.
Got it.
And so you have that moment. And then this book theoretically is supposed to make her so powerful and make her make the darkness take over. And then the dream, you wake up from the dream, and then there's the FBI agent, Nightingale or whatever his name was, Nightwing, and he's there.
Nightingale.
Yeah, okay, Nightingale, and he's there to get you, and that's the end of that act.
And he arrests you.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah,
he arrests you and Barry.
Yeah, the one thing that I thought was fun about this episode in general is Barry keeps carrying around this stupid cardboard cutout of you.
It's so funny.
It's so funny. And I'm like, how does it keep getting
Barry.
These places?
He's my favorite character.
Where does it keep coming from? We're running from people and you're still carrying the cardboard cutout, and they keep doing creepy close-ups of the cardboard cutout, and you're like, is it gonna come alive? What is this?
No, it's great. But so also weird. Barry's like, don't worry, I got your cardboard cutout. And Alan's like, why?
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 It's sitting in the car with you, and you're just like, okay.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, really? Anything else in that you wanted to talk about? I think I'm good.
Yeah, that one is pretty light. Yeah.
Okay. So then episode 5 starts, and you are in a jail cell with Barry. Yeah. But you also learn that the sheriff is on your side at this point.
Yeah,
but
she's pretty cool.
Agent Nightingale is fucking...
a mess.
Ooh, he's a mess.
Yeah,
and
he's
then
drunk. He's drunk at work. Yeah, shit.
He's drunk all the time, and that's why I think another reason why the sheriff is on your side is because obviously the FBI agent is yeah. And the cool scene that happens kind of at the beginning, which I really liked, was when the FBI agent was like, wait, I've read this before. And he goes in to get the manuscript pages, and then he gets taken by the darkness, because this whole time he's been saying, Alan, you have a conspiracy against a federal agent.
Yeah,
you're having a conspiracy to kill a federal agent, because the federal agent Nightwing had found, or Nightingale, I keep saying Nightwing.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry if I planted that.
That's a DC character. And the Agent Nightingale has found these manuscript pages and has read his journey, and then him dying, right?
Yeah.
So he's trying to get Alan before that happens, but then everything leading up to it still happens, and he's like, wait, I've read this before.
Yeah.
And gets taken, which I thought was a really fun little moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then the sheriff is like, okay, I'm gonna help you, and your goal is to get to Cynthia because she's the lady of the light or whatever.
Yeah, this is the crazy Weaver girl that was all creepy but seemed like she knew stuff. That's her. Yeah. Yeah.
And then the other thing that happens is Barry is wrapped in Christmas lights, which I absolutely love.
It's so funny. I'm like, what a choice.
So funny. Yeah. He wraps himself in Christmas lights. And so what you're trying to do with the sheriff. So it's you, the sheriff, and Barry. And I feel vibes between Barry and the sheriff.
I feel like that's going to happen. We'll see in number 2.
Well, yeah, we'll see in 2. And the thing that you're trying to do is get to the helicopter so that you can go to Cynthia. Like the rescue helicopter so that you can go to Cynthia. So that you're like going through the town, you're running into bad guys, blah, blah, blah. You're getting to the helicopter. So a bunch of shit happens. And then you finally get to the helicopter and it starts to crash whenever you get to where Cynthia is at the power plant.
Yeah, she lives at the power plant because she wants as much light as possible.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And Alan had like hopped off the helicopter to go to her and they were still flying it. And then you hear the helicopter crash and you go to check on Barry and the sheriff because Barry's your best friend. You get them. Then you join back up with Cynthia in the power plant to get to the light room. You get to the light room. Do you want to say what happens here? Because I thought it was really actually like quite cool.
So
I like this reveal.
I think there's some context with her storyline to like match up with the reveal a little bit because there's like a little bit of a twist here, which is really fun. And it's that like you learn from Cynthia Weaver that this has all happened before pretty much. Like Thomas Zane, this writer, started writing stuff that also came true. She even makes an allusion to like, he's like, how do you know all this? And she was like, he wrote it this way. I don't know. It was a really fun, interesting like line that I was like, ooh, that's cool. And so she, during the original, theoretically, like during that original writing that Tom had written, he had said, like, you need to keep this thing, whatever it is. Somebody is going to ask for it. And so she has been waiting this whole time for somebody to show up, and she's keeping this thing, whatever it is, in the room, like the well-lit room is what she calls it. And it's a thing that has like theoretically no shadows. She replaces all the bulbs like constantly. She's rotating them. She keeps a schedule to make sure that there is no darkness in this like well-lit room. And so when you get to this well-lit room, there's a little box and you open up the box and inside is the clicker. So the clicker from the flashback that you saw a while ago was like, and this is where it gets kind of trippy and I'm curious like your take on it. Is my take was that Zane had written about Alan and the clicker previously in his original writing as the way that this was going to be like solved, gave it like in this writing to Weaver to protect in this well-lit room, and Alan much later comes and finds this piece of paper about Alan as a kid getting this clicker, and then the clicker is just sitting in the box, and that's the thing that's supposed to defeat the darkness. And so it's like this super trippy, like, did Zane already write this in? Did Alan write Zane writing this in? I still don't know, but it was really cool. It was really fun.
Well, to me, I the way I interpreted it was Zane wrote Alan Wake almost into existence.
Yeah, that's what I was
like,
wondering.
That's how I interpreted it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it talked about how he was a child. Like, Zane wrote about Alan Wake as a child and was like, he had these issues and he blah, 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 and he was just a child. And I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah, like, would Alan ever have come if Zane had written these things? Like, I don't know.
Would Alan exist?
Yeah.
Would he exist?
Wild. I didn't think
he
about
like
that part.
Named him before he existed. You know what I mean?
That's true. You're right because it was the 70s.
Yeah. Anyways, so that was my interpretation and I thought it was really cool. Then episode 6, Alan heads to the lake with the clicker and he jumps into the lake to rescue Alice.
This one doesn't have a lot of story in it.
No, he starts talking to the older lady, and then he, like, her chest, it has a hole in it instead of a heart. Like, it's just an empty hole, like a black hole almost.
Wait, I'm gonna pause you. I'm gonna pause you for a second. So the thing that I think sets that up a little bit is right before you learn that you need to put the light into the darkness, and that's how you're going to defeat it. And so when you fall into the lake and find the old lady there with the hole in her chest, it's like implied that she is the darkness, and that clicker is the light that you can like shove in there and give her back the light. Because what you've learned is that when Zane wrote up this like story, it's because Barbara Jagger had drowned, and he wrote the original story so that Barbara would re-alive. He like wrote her back into existence, and he, in doing that, didn't make a trade. And so he brought darkness up and alive by re-aliving a person when he shouldn't have. And instead, this Barbara character is like full of darkness. Like there's no light in her. And that is the creepy old lady, theoretically. And she's standing there with a hole where her heart was, because Zane ripped out her heart to kill her because he realized there was no light in her. So like that lady is like theoretically Barbara, but like darkness with Barbara's face, and he literally wrote her into existence, which I thought was really fun. Like, yeah,
that is fun.
Yeah,
that is fun. Okay, so then you stick the clicker into her heart, and boom, there's a ton of light. You see a cutscene of Alice coming out of the water, and she's like coughing, and she's like, Alan, and Alan's not fucking there. He's not there. And it does this pan over the town, and everything's light, and it's happy, and blah, blah, blah. And then it kind of zooms out, and it zooms back in on Alan Wake, and he's at a typewriter, and he just says, it's not a lake, it's an ocean.
Cut. End scene.
Cut.
And I have absolutely no idea what that means. Theoretically, I don't know what that means.
I think just talking about how the darkness isn't the lake, it's like much bigger.
Ooh, I like that. That's a nice interpretation. I had wondered if this ending implied, so clearly he had traded himself for Alice. Like Alice got out and he was stuck like in the darkness. So like clearly he did that. But what I was interested in, and maybe they're going to talk about that in 2, and I think maybe they talk about it in some of the DLC as well, Chris had mentioned, but they had brought up the idea of this like Mr. Scratch, which is like this doppelganger of Alan Wake. And this doppelganger, like the phrase that they use when they talk about it.
Yeah,
is like,
I wrote that down because I was so confused. I was like, Mr. Scratch ? And then what Mr. Scratch said to him was, your friends will meet him when you're gone.
Yeah, and so I'm like, is Mr. Scratch going to be like is Mr. Scratch in this new world? Like, is it this other reverse side of him?
Well, the thing that's weird is that he has gone missing. That's what you learn in Control.
Yeah.
Like, he's been missing.
Exactly. So, like, I don't know what this Mr. Scratch is. I don't know, like, how he surfaces. I think some of it's in the DLC, so maybe maybe there's some more lore and stuff there. Maybe that's what's, like, explored in 2. But that's what was really interesting to me is, like, it's clear to me that he made the trade, and, like, I get that. But what about that aspect of it? I still don't know. I don't know. And I'm hoping they play around with it more. We'll see.
Okay, so in the DLC, Alan is still trapped in the dark place.
Yeah.
And then... yeah, that's what the DLC is him trying to get out of the dark place, but he's still in it.
Still in it, yeah. I might go back and play it, but I'm not sure. Maybe Chris will play it for me more.
I think I'll watch it.
Yeah.
I think I'll watch it. I like the story so much.
The story was really good, and it was really compelling the way that they told it. I was pretty meh about the gameplay. Oh, the last thing that I'll mention just at the end, because I thought it was really interesting, is the way that they talk about the Cynthia Weaver person through the whole thing is that she was touched by the darkness and lived. And so she's all like weird, and she knows like the power of it. And so that's why she like lives in the power plant and is like horrified of the dark. And at the end, like, you know, that the waitress, Rose or whatever, that was being controlled by the darkness.
Oh, that's right.
She's like
it's
standing
still
there,
being controlled.
Yeah, she's like standing there shaking, holding the lantern, and I can't tell if she's being controlled by the darkness, if she's just been touched by the darkness, so she's went mad, or like what. But something clearly happened to Rose too, and that I thought was a pretty interesting touch.
I think she was still possessed.
I don't know. I mean, she clearly had something wrong with her, but because she was sitting there shaking, like holding the lantern, she looked definitely like not right. Like she did not look right. Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah. Okay, so let's do our wrap-up thoughts.
Yeah, final thoughts.
Cool.
Yeah.
I really liked the story.
Yeah.
The gameplay was just absolutely not for me. Like, I was trying to be kind to it, but then I was like, well, it's not about the game. Because I really liked the story, like I said, but like I did not have fun with the gameplay at all. It was like really frustrating to me. And I had a much better time watching someone else play, if I'm being honest. So I gave the story a 4 out of 5, and I gave the gameplay a 2 out of 5.
Honestly, yeah. All of the things.
Yeah.
Wait, what's your rating though? What did you pick?
So I guess if I'm going in between those two things and averaging it, I'll give it a 3 out of 5 clickers. No, that's like Last of Us. That sounds like Last of Us. 3 out of 5 Alice's.
Okay.
I like Alice. No, berries. I like Barry.
I was going to say you have to do Barry. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
Barry
for the
was
website,
my favorite
I'll
character.
pick one with Barry with the Christmas lights.
Thank you. Yeah, Barry was my favorite character. But yeah, I think I don't even know. I feel like honestly I'd probably give it a 2 if it's just off of gameplay, but the story was good enough that I guess it's a 3 for me. But yeah.
Yeah.
I was kind of warring between 2 and 3.
I felt very similar. The phrase that I actually wrote down was like, I wanted to read this book or watch this movie. I did not want to play it. I didn't want to do it. It felt like I do feel like they had tried to match the gameplay with the storytelling it was just, I didn't care. And it was boring and repetitive. And at some point, I literally just wanted to skip through it all. So I felt very similarly. Chris really enjoyed this and said that, like, for him, he actually liked the gameplay. So I'll surface it because I know that neither one of us did. So I'll say his opinion. But he liked the gameplay. And the reason he likes it is because he said it feels very zen to him. Like, it's just like a mindless, I'm going to like tase him with a flashlight, shoot him with the gun, tase him with the flashlight, shoot him with the gun. And he liked that he could kind of just get into a rhythm and just like wipe them through. And really liking the atmosphere and the story on top of it. He was like, it just felt like I was very immersed and I was just like there with the game. So he actually really liked it. I did not, but for those that are listening, he did like that aspect of it. I'm not it's just not the kind of gameplay I'd normally like. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I like that you split this one up. I feel very similarly. I think overall this one's hard because like I did want to finish it for the story, but I literally did not want to play it. It was really fun to watch. I'll give it a 3 out of 5 also. I'll do 3 out of 5. Let's do 3 out of 5 sheriffs, because I liked the sheriff. Sarah, she's pretty cool.
The sheriff. Yeah,
I
did
her.
Too.
But
I hope she makes an appearance in the second one.
I know.
With Barry. In love, married.
You're like, if they aren't together, then I'm going to throw it in the trash.
Yeah.
Trash.
Straight to the trash.
I will be interested to see what the second one is. I'm hoping that they update the gameplay and that it's something different and more interesting.
What I do know is that it's more horror. So just as a heads up, I know. The second one's going to be more horror and it's going to be more survival.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Try to mentally ready myself for this.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so that is that. Thank you for listening to our podcast. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe and rate it. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Baddy Breakdowns, and visit our website, baddybreakdowns.com, made by Bridget. The podcast art was done by Tanisha Vernikar, and the podcast was edited by me, Maddie. Join us next time to hear us two baddies break down Alan Wake 2 Part 1. Because we're only going to have a couple of days to play it before we post our episode. So we'll be doing, if it is episodic, we'll probably be doing 1 or 2 episodes and then talking about our theories, first impressions, and then we'll continue into the next week for the rest of the episodes. So yeah, look forward to continuing to dig into this world. And I wonder, or I'm hoping that Alan Wake 2 makes references to Control. So I'm going to keep an eye out for it.
Oh, that's fun. You'll have to let me know. I haven't played in so long. Maybe I should pick it up and play a little bit in the next week and change in the meantime to see. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.